All right, going live in 3, 2, 1. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Mix It Up with ML, episode number 4. This afternoon, we have my very dear friend, Vivek Vipperla, who I'm very excited to have on the pod. Thanks for coming on, Vivek.
Hey, man, excited to be here.
All right. Well, I like to start each episode just with a little context for the listeners to explain to them how we met. So if you would like to do that, feel free.
Me and my boy ML have met going back like 8 years now.
Yes, sir.
We're both in the same volunteer department at Paoli Hospital. We've been on the same career path since.
For a long time. So yeah, I forgot to mention at the beginning here that Vivek is a Pitt graduate and currently studying medicine overseas. So we met back in the pre-med life in high school, volunteering at the local hospital. Classic pre-meds.
Oh, yeah.
So, but today we are not going to talk much about medicine because honestly, Vivek and I talk about it way too much individually, one-on-one. So we're going to spare the listeners. Just going to focus on some other really cool things that Vivek is into and things that he's done in his life. So if you're ready, Vivek, let's hop right into it, man.
Let's get started.
All right. So first thing I want to ask you about, I guess we can kind of move chronologically here, right, is in high school, you were a big tennis player. You also played at Pitt. You played club tennis. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I just wanted to ask you a little bit about how you got into tennis, when that started for you, what you love so much about it. And then I have a couple more specific questions I want to dive into, but yeah, love that background.
So I've been playing tennis since I was 5 years old. It's like the classic Indian kid sport.
Right.
But like from a young age, I was pretty decent. So I decided to stick with it. And like my favorite thing about it is in singles, like it really taught me a lot when you're playing out there by yourself to keep your emotions in check, to think through things, strategy. It's like not just athleticism. It's also like it's like 50% mental, 50% physical at the minimum.
Right.
And so that was just a lot of learning lessons from there. And then the best part about it was starting in high school, you got to play in team sports situations and playing doubles with like my best friend senior year of high school was just an experience I wouldn't have traded for anything. And like, it's not like the classic teamwork that you get in basketball, but it's still like the same brotherhood. Like you're on the sidelines rooting for your teammates, or you're out there trying to carry your team to victory. So it's just like a bunch of learning lessons, sportsmanship, strategy, keeping your composure. And I've learned so much from tennis. And I'm so grateful. Like I've made so many friends. I wouldn't have traded it for the world. And it's something I hope to pass on to my kids one day.
Right. That's super awesome. And I think you touched on one of the main questions that I had for you, right? Is because I have no experience with an individual sport. Like I know you mentioned you played doubles, which is sick. And you can learn so much about teamwork through that. But would you agree that tennis is, primarily an individual sport, especially in singles? So like, I'd love to just hear more about the psychology underlying that, because for me, I don't know, one of the reasons why I love tennis so much is when I watch, it feels like every point matters and there's so much pressure on every point. And I literally cannot imagine how much mental toughness that takes to be out there doing that. So I just wanted to get more of that, pick your brain on to sort of the individual aspect of the sport.
Yeah, really, you're out there on what seems like an island. Like there's no, like you play basketball and there's like timeouts and stuff where you can get coaching if things are going not well for you out there. But really, it's the only break you get is at the end of a set.
Right.
And you get like 2 minutes of coaching there, and like everything else out there is like you got to adapt by yourself. Like you got to think through things by yourself. Like you got to figure out what's working, what's not working. It's just like you're literally out there on an island, man.
Right. And were there any techniques that you used to calm yourself down or to focus? Was there a lot of positive self-talk going on, or did you not talk so much to yourself mentally? Just sort of, what was that like?
For me, it was more like I'd be kicking myself mentally, but the way I'd calm down would be like take an extra couple seconds in between a serving point, like circle back around, like take a circle back to the fence. I used to take advantage of my water breaks whenever I could get them on changeovers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just mostly like trying to calm yourself down. Like you can never get too low, and but you also can't get too high, you know?
Right. Right. And I think that's interesting because, I'm a psychology major, so I'm loving all the psychology aspect of this. I remember I was watching the US Open this past, I think August or September it was. I believe it was Azarenka who was playing Serena, and Azarenka just got destroyed in the first set, I believe. And then I saw her literally like pumping herself up after every point, just like jumping up and down. And there was just a lot of like positive self-talk, it seemed, where she was psyching herself up, and in a good way. And then she won the next two sets. So it's just interesting to me that for you, that wasn't quite your strategy, but it seems to work for at least Azarenka.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like Serena does it too.
Yeah.
Whereas more like the other girls players like Osaka will just sit there with like a towel over her head on the sidelines. Like that's more like me. Like I just like try not to show any emotion,
Mm-hmm.
like whether it's positive or negative. I just try to do my job out there.
Right. Right. And I love that. I love hearing your perspective because I think when I'm trying to translate this to basketball, I think there are also different ways to, approach the game on the court. Like some people would say that trash talk is sort of indicative of being mentally weak, right? And that somebody like Draymond Green or somebody who trash talks a lot is kind of mentally trying to get in your head and they're not that strong. But, Michael Jordan was a huge trash talker. So, but then you have Kawhi on the other hand, who like says absolutely nothing, just stone cold killer. So I think it's like most things in life, there are different ways to approach the sport, right? There's not one way to do it. But I just think it's interesting to hear the different ways that you approach it in tennis versus other
Yeah,
people.
it really is whatever you got to do to make sure like you put the last point behind you and you're focused on the next point.
Right, right, for sure, for sure. So, okay, that's really interesting. And then another question I had: did you guys have umpires in high school and or club? Because I know in my high school there were none. So that's an interesting dynamic as well. So, could you talk a little bit more about that?
No umpires, it's all on the honor system. Like
Wow.
you got to trust that your opponents will give you the same kind of calls that you're giving them.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, it wasn't that bad. I know, like when you play the tournaments, it gets pretty toxic. But during like school competitions, like there's people on benches on either side. So like your teammates will see like if you're robbing someone of a line call, and your coaches will be watching too, right? Like
Mm.
the coaches have like a pretty low tolerance for that kind of behavior. At least at my school, they did.
Right, right. So making sure people are watching is one surefire way to get human beings to be honest about things.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Okay. Got it. And then I have a couple of other questions about the tennis world. Um, One, what do you think about the barrier to entry to the sport? Because I have one other friend who's really into tennis, and a lot of times he laments kind of just how much financial resources it takes to get into the sport. And is that something that you agree with or disagree with? Or I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, so like rackets are expensive, balls are expensive. When you get to a high level, you're paying for like specific types of stringing. Like you got to pay
Mm-hmm.
for new grips. You got to pay for, and tennis shoes themselves are also expensive too.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say like if you want to just play for fun, it's a pretty low cost sport.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you're going to be trying to get better, like a lot of it's like hard to be self taught. Like unless
Right.
if you have a parent, that's great. But if you're trying to sign up for coaching and stuff, that stuff's very expensive for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty high cost sport at the end of all of it. If you want to be like playing high school or college tennis.
Right, right. And I hear that. It makes sense based on all of that. And especially because it's an individual sport, like people are going to get coaching and tutoring. And that's going to cost a lot. And then if everybody's doing it, everybody else wants to do it. So I could see how that would happen.
Yeah, and even on the pro tour, man, like
Yeah.
if you're outside the top 100, a lot of times you're losing money by traveling to these tournaments. Like
Hmm.
even like it's like a big topic on the professional tour, like how to like make lower level tournaments have more prize money because
Right.
people are losing money trying to get good.
Right. Right. And that was another question I was going to ask is, so these pro players, by and large, I know this was not the case with Jennifer Brady, who went to UCLA and is now competing on these tours. And I'm sure there's other people who are similar to that, but by and large, it's the idea is that if you go to college to play tennis, you're less likely to be pro than if you start playing on the tour when you're younger. And so do these people who are on the tour when they're younger, do they not go to high school or college, or like, how does that work typically?
So a lot of times what will happen are like the best players in America. Tennis is not like a huge sport in America. Like we don't have like we have a lot of pros, but we don't really have anyone at like the top tier level. At least on the men's side. On the women's side, we're like very well
Why
off.
is that, do you think?
I just think the men here are like given incentives like our best male athletes. It's the same thing with soccer. They're given the same incentive to play like football or basketball rather than playing soccer or tennis.
But what is that incentive though, do you think?
It's just because it's more popular, I think.
More
Like
popular.
yeah, like you don't really see and especially like for a lot of like people in inner cities and stuff, like football and basketball are way more low cost to play. And the good thing for females is like there's a high incentive to play tennis if you're a good athlete on the female side because all these major tournaments pay their men and women equal prize money.
Right, right. And that wage gap is way more pronounced in other sports for
Exactly.
sure. Interesting. Go ahead though, about, the tour versus college.
Yeah, so like even like the most of the best kids I know or like that most people would know in America, they'll go to like these academies for tennis when they're kids, and a lot of them will end up just playing college tennis. But like, it's like it's like a boarding school, but like it's just school and then tennis, and that's like the same way it works like in Europe and like in South America and stuff. Like Rafa Nadal just opened his own academy.
I saw that.
Where it's school and tennis and that's it.
Right.
But the thing is, like, it's very hard to maintain the balance. And if you're trying to become a professional tennis player, it's a lot of hours every day. So like school, like a lot of these people, a lot of these kids are like, they go on tour, like on the junior tour, starting at like 14 and 15, right, and they're just homeschooled. So a lot of them will have their high school diploma by the end of it. But like, if you're really that good, like you can go pro at 18. Like what's the point of going to college? You can always go back to college, but you can't really compete professionally while playing college at the same time,
Right. Right. And so this brings up an interesting point to me that I'm thinking now about these models of sort of like amateur professionals, right? Like you talked about it in Europe. That's a very common thing. Like for Barca, for example, like they have La Masia. So that's basically where the kids go and they get schooling and teaching, but it's also like a football academy. But I don't think they go to like university after that, typically speaking. But so my question is, and my thought process is, in soccer, are the wages so lucrative that once they play, 10 or 15 years in Premier League or La Liga, that they don't really have to do much income wise for the rest of their lives? Or like, and is that the case for tennis? Because I know Maria Sharapova was actually on Shark Tank the other day. I was watching her on Shark Tank. So she's a big entrepreneur now. But is that an issue for tennis that you know of, that once people get out of it, they don't have much else they can do, or because they have like less education earlier, or what do you think?
Well, a lot of them, if you're a professional, like tennis is your whole life. So like, even though you're not making that much money, if you're outside like the top 100 per se, right, and you don't really have these big sponsorships, like after you retire, like you can always go back to school then first off. And there's like a lot of jobs in coaching. Like now it's become a really big thing for ex-players to start coaching these new kids.
Right.
Or like you could go work at like like you can become a tennis pro, like
right,
at like one of these academies. Those are pretty well-paying jobs. So there's a lot of opportunities post tennis. Like once again, like on ESPN, they have coverages of most of the slams. A lot of them are just ex-players themselves too.
Got it. Okay, so that makes sense. And then a couple more questions here. One, would you want your kids to play tennis? It sounds like you would. Would you?
I think there's just too much to learn, like both individually and with their friends. Like I met some of the best friends of my life playing tennis, but I've also learned a lot about myself while out there on the court. So I would never like push them to play anything they would want to play, but I'd try and nudge them. Yeah, for sure.
Gotcha. And then also, how was the club tennis scene in college? I'd love to hear about that because I played club basketball. I'd love to hear, how similar or different it was. I know you guys had a tournament in Princeton, I believe, one time, or like in the area. Like
sectionals every year were at Princeton, actually.
Sick.
So our club tennis team we actually had the fortune to be pretty good. Like we were pretty well off. Like
Mhm.
most of the years, like if we didn't qualify for nationals, it was a huge disappointment and everything.
Mhm.
But it was fun. It was like only like 30 members. It was co-ed.
Mhm.
I made so many friends. Like I've got to travel so many places, like all the way out to Arizona.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just like on tournament weekends, like it's just you and you're like a group of like 10 people
Right.
just like crashing at a hotel, like playing tennis during the day and like just hanging out at night.
Mhm.
And practice wasn't too bad. It was just 2 to 3 times a week at night. So it wasn't too bad at all. Like not much of a time commitment. Like there was no pressure to come to practice if you had exams or anything like that.
Right. Right.
But it was one of the best decisions that I made joining club tennis.
Right. That sounds super dope. I think sounds like you guys have a really solid program there that's been established for a while,
Yeah.
and it takes time to get that up and running. And in my case, I was like part of an effort to try to make our program more legit. And I think club sports could be super fulfilling, if you can strike that balance between having
Yeah.
fun and everybody's not there to play the sport, right? If they were, they would have been D1. But also like getting some of that competition in. It's an interesting, niche of people that go into club sports. Don't
Yeah,
you know what
exactly.
I mean?
And like I met so many friends that like we've decided to take classes together too, like on the same at the same major.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like someone else you have in class too if you ever need anything academically as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel like we got to plug club sports. If anyone's listening, definitely consider, playing some club sports in college. It was fun.
Yeah, well, it'll
Um,
be one of the best decisions you make.
yeah, very solid, very solid. And then my last question about tennis, bro, is why are there different court services? Firstly, why are there, I think, at least 4 different court services, 3 maybe? And then why are some players better than others? Like, why is Rafa dominating the French Open, I believe, on clay?
Yeah.
Why is that? That's just why is there not a uniform surface that everybody plays the same surface on?
So a lot of it is like in certain areas, like hard courts are the easiest to maintain because you don't have to do anything for them. But grass, like you got to precisely cut them and water them and everything.
Right.
And same with clay, like you got to water clay courts as well. But I think a lot of it is just like it gives one of the benefits is it gives like more players the benefit of the doubt. Like if like you grew up playing on a surface and like you're really comfortable at it, like yeah, you got to get better on hard courts or clay courts, but like there's a certain part of the season that's built in there for you, and
Mm,
it's easier to take advantage of. Like Rafa has like 13 slams at the French Open now, I think.
yeah.
He has 20 total. Meanwhile, Feds are more diverse, but you
Mm-hmm.
still got the same number.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like each court and each like surface provides a different thing. Like hard courts are like the ball goes through faster than clay courts where the ball tends to hang up a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And grass in its prime like benefited a certain type of style where you just serve and come into the net and put your first volley away.
Right. Right.
Grass and hard courts are more attacking styles of play, whereas clay like can benefit more defensive styles of play too.
Right. Right. And okay, that's really interesting. I remember one of my friends saying the same thing as you, that the ball sort of stays higher on clay because it bounces higher, right? That makes sense. And it's moving a little bit faster on hard court and then a little bit slower on grass. Would that be
Um,
accurate?
grass is actually the fastest,
It's
and
the
it's like
fastest.
in theory, and it's supposed to benefit like people with good footwork and stuff because
Okay.
it's very easy to slip.
Mm-hmm.
And, like that's like one of the things where like they say Roger Federer is like the most beautiful tennis player to watch because
Mm-hmm.
he's like glides around the court,
Mm-hmm.
and like you just watch him play on grass, like you never see him take a tumble or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just like moving out there effortlessly. And I
Mm-hmm.
think like even the surface changes go back to like the whole sport. Like even with the surface changes during the season, like it's all about like tennis is always about adapting. Like you got to adapt to surface changes, you got to adapt to your opponents.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty
That's
nice that they do it
fascinating.
like that.
That's fascinating. I love that. How it contributes to. It's also a nice thing to be able to try to work on your game to adapt it, as you said, to different scenarios, and you always want to improve and get better at different parts of the sport, right? And so, I guess I just wonder. I don't know if you have this answer. Why in the first place that these courts existed? Like, was in England it was more grass, right? Is that true? I just wonder like the
that one I
sociological,
don't have. I
you
don't have
don't
any.
know.
By the time
Yeah,
when I was growing up, I was just used to the fact that there was these different types of surfaces.
super interesting. Very interesting. Okay, got it. Very cool, bro. Thanks for sharing that part of your life with me. Then the next thing I wanted to ask you about was your experience studying abroad. So you went to study abroad in London, was it?
Yep.
And could you just tell me a little bit more about that? And because I never got to have that experience, unfortunately, I'm
So
sick about it.
one
But
of the nicest things, like I didn't have much time during my fall or spring semesters, but one of the nicest things Pitt does is they offer you a summer session to study abroad,
mm,
and you can choose whether you want to do like one of the benefits of the program in London was it was like 6 credits. You only had to take one class, and then with the other, if you didn't want to take a second class, like you were able to do an internship, and it's just 20 hours a week of the internship.
mhm,
So which is not bad at all. Like 20 hours Monday through Friday.
right.
And so I decided to take it up. Like I got a nice internship at a surgical hospital in London, which was really cool too.
Okay,
So
lit.
I was doing like cancer research there, and I was taking one class for for a literature gen ed credit,
Mhm.
and I ended up having the time of my life, man. Like I roomed with people from multiple universities. The place we stayed, there's 13 flats, so there's 13 flats of people,
Mhm.
and like some of them like even during this pandemic, like a bunch of us are staying in touch. Like we had a Zoom session and everything. Like
Sick.
these are some of my best friends for life.
Mhm.
And just like exploring England, like it was great to get to see the soccer culture there
Mhm.
because it's way more intense than it was here.
Right.
Uh, my favorite team in the Premier League, Chelsea, won the Premier League while I was there actually too.
Mhm. Mhm.
And sadly the parade was canceled due to like some unfortunate circumstances. So we
Oh
couldn't
man.
parade, but we got to tour. Me and my flatmates got to tour Stamford Bridge, which was really
Right.
sick.
Right.
Uh, and there's a lot of opportunities to travel too. Like I spent a weekend in Wales with some of my buddies,
Mhm.
and it was just like the perfect way to relax on the weekends. Like
Mhm.
we didn't have any access to cellular data while we were there.
Right.
Only at the hotel we did in
Mhm.
Wales. So the whole day we were just outside, like hiking, kayaking. We went cliff diving.
Wow.
Like man, I didn't know water could still be so blue.
Yeah. Right. Right. Wow.
And then
That,
the other place I traveled to was was Paris, and
mhm.
I'm like a big fan of like the old architecture, and like the whole vibe that Paris gives off is like it's like somewhere in between being very elitist, but
Right.
also like but also being very like old fashioned. Like
Mhm.
it just seems like slow down. Like when you walk through the streets, like those cobblestone roads and everything like that. Like we don't have things like that here.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the food, man, on
The
another level,
French food is
on
amazing.
another level. Like
Right.
I ate like crepes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Right, right. That's awesome, bro. And sort of on that vein, I know you have this love for food and you love cooking. And so could you just talk a little bit more about how you got into that? And I know you mentioned that you think it's a cool way to just connect cultures and connect people. So did you experience any of that when in your travels or any other part of your life? Like, I'd love to hear more about
So
that.
one of the things like that was like that I'm very fortunate to live in like the suburbs of Philadelphia. Uh, we have a very diverse population here. Like
Mm-hmm.
on like a lot of my neighbors are Indian, or like
Mm-hmm.
my next door neighbors are Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like I was always raised to value culture, and
Mm-hmm.
like being Indian is a huge part of who I am. And I see like for some of my best friends, but all the way back in elementary school, like they'd only talk to their parents in like Mandarin, or they
Mm-hmm.
talk to their parents in Hindi, and it's just something that's so cool. And like when you go to their houses, like you see like these different kinds of food being served, and it's just like what I eat at home every day is completely different than what my friends eat at home every day.
Right.
And it always just caught me by surprise, like how amazing it is that no matter like that you no matter the fact that you immigrated here, you're still able to maintain the connection to your home country.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to do it, I think, is through food. Like because
Mm,
food is such an essential part of our lives. Like we can't survive without eating.
right.
And there's all these markets and stuff now where like there's Chinese markets, there's Indian stores, there's
Mm-hmm.
Japanese markets, and and like down south, like soul food is a huge thing. And it's just like so fascinating where like it's whenever you're eating, it feels like you're connected to a different part of yourself that you and then it's something that you could share with your friends easily too. Like you can always just have friends over for dinner, or you can cook food for them.
Right.
And it's just the easiest way, I think, to share the love that you have for who you are.
Right. Right. I think that's a great point. And I was actually in one of those for work. We had like a professional development lunch workshop thing that was about self-care and whatnot. And, self-care is a big part of, culture right now, especially in the pandemic, which is great that we're focusing more on it. But I thought one of the interesting points that our, moderator made was the idea that aroma and like foods can be a part of, generating those positive feelings in yourself and reminding yourself of things that you love. Like, for example, for me, I love spaghetti and meatballs because I'm Italian, basic, but I love it. And so when I eat it, it really does bring me back to when I was super young and I'd be eating it around the table with my family. And it's a very subtle thing that I haven't thought about before this workshop, of the power of aroma and food in connecting both yourself to parts of your culture and then, as you mentioned, to other people, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like there's positive and negative thoughts with certain food. Like no matter where I go, like if I smell fish, like I'm just in a horrible mood because I don't like fish at all.
Food aversion learning. That's super powerful. Yeah.
Like if I smell like Indian food somewhere else, like just or if I walk past an Indian restaurant, like I'm always reminded like, oh man, I miss being home. Like I miss eating my mom's cooking.
Right.
Stuff like that. And like some people I know, like they'll tell stories about like waking up on Christmas morning and they have the same food out there every year on Christmas morning. And that's something they pass down when they have their own family. Like they cook the same stuff for their kids on Christmas morning.
Right.
And like Thanksgiving is a huge one too. Like there's these food staples on Thanksgiving, and it's just a tradition every year. And you learn to associate like good times with family, good times with friends, with just something as small as like what you're eating when you're with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it just speaks to the power of, I think the person in the panel was referring to it as like life hacking, like certain tips that you can do in your life to generate those positive feelings and positive emotions. And so, I don't know, for me, it was really interesting to remember the power of food. And it sounds like it's been such an important part of your life. So I don't know, maybe I should try to, maybe a way, they say food is a way to another person's heart, right? So maybe I should cook food for my friends. And that's a nice gesture that I can work on going forward.
Exactly. And I didn't realize like how much like my mom's cooking meant to me until I came back over break from college.
For sure.
Nothing will ever beat that. Like, as long as like it's something I've been taking advantage of for sure while living at home during the pandemic.
Oh yeah. Nothing like mom's cooking. For sure. Okay. That's super interesting, bro. And I think it's a nice segue into this other aspect of your life that I wanted to ask you about, which is your Indian culture and your Indian heritage, and specifically based on this idea of representation in media as like a starting point. We can jump off elsewhere, but you recommended Master of None for me to watch with Aziz Ansari, who I loved from Parks and Rec. And so when you told me he had his own show, I was like, bet, like I need some more Aziz. So love this show. I thought it touched on so many different themes, such as these cross-cultural differences, right? And the one with the parents of immigrants and everything. So I'd love to just hear your thoughts on that show and why you like that show, and just also the importance of having Indian representation in media.
Yeah, exactly. Like growing up, like I thought it would be awesome if I could like be a professional athlete, and if not, like I could work for like ESPN or something like that. But like when you turn on ESPN, they're doing a much better job now of having more diverse people like as analysts and stuff like that. And just like any sports show or anything like that, like for me, sports media is like the thing I pay attention to the most. There's just not that many opportunities out there for people that aren't white or that don't have these connections. But one of the things that's growing now, like starting with Mindy Kaling in The Office, like she was a writer and a character in there. Like she's been huge for Indian representations, and so has Aziz. And like one of the things about Master of None that I loved is Aziz doesn't like hide who he was. Like he talked, like there's episodes where he talks about how it was growing up as an Indian. he's got his two friends on there, Lena and Alan.
Mhm.
One's black and one's Chinese, and like they talk about what it's like growing up for them as well, especially with Lena being a member of the LGBTQ community on the show. And it was just like so nice, refreshing to see them, people like appreciate like what it's like to be Indian, like with the dynamic between Aziz and his parents on the show.
Yeah.
And all that, like when he talks about what it's like with religion, like how he's not as religious, but his mom wants him to be religious.
Yeah.
And it's just like these battles that like we all like fight at home every day.
Right.
That no one really knows about until they're put on display for other people to be aware of.
Right. Right. And so if you don't mind, obviously you don't have to share anything that you don't want to share, but I'd love to just kind of ask about, how important, for example, religion is in your life and what it looks like in your family. And also just the idea that I guess I just wasn't that educated. I thought the majority of Indians are Hindu. Is that true
Oh
or
yeah.
no? That the majority are Hindu, and then there's some Muslim, because I think
Yeah,
Aziz
there's a
was
big
Muslim
Muslim
on the
community as well.
there's a big Muslim community. Okay.
Yeah. And there's even a growing Christian community in India as well. Like
Interesting.
in my grandparents' village, last time I was there was 2019, and I was so surprised when I saw a church there. I was like, what? Like that was never there before, and like it's like a sore topic for a lot of people because of the British invasion that there's Christians in India. Like some of my friends are Christian Indians, and like there's nothing less Indian about them. Just like the same with Muslim Indians. It's just different. I was raised as a very devout Hindu.
Okay.
I still pray.
Wow.
I still pray daily. I don't eat beef. And God for me, like we have many gods and goddesses, and like that's a big part of my life. Like my mom will always tell us like when a festival is coming up and like we celebrate it, like we don't eat meat on days we're not supposed to eat meat on holidays. Once a week on Mondays, I don't eat meat regardless.
Got it.
And after showering, it's just a daily occurrence to pray to God.
Very interesting.
It's just like for me, it's just a way to know like someone's there watching for me, like, and the way that we have these gods for like different aspects in our life, like who to honor when, and it's just like something that like I was raised on, and like I couldn't imagine not being religious.
Got it. Thanks for sharing that. And I didn't know that there was that Christian, Muslim, and Hindu kind of mixture in India. I thought what percentage would you say is Hindu? I'm just trying to learn. Yeah, it's interesting.
For sure, the majority is still Hindu, but
okay.
like in politics, there's a growing amount of like Christian Indians and Muslim Indians that are trying to push, and there's like it's a very messy topic in India. Like
for sure,
religion is a way bigger deal there. Like growing up here, like I was able to appreciate like I didn't take an advantage of those. I didn't like take those stereotypes for granted or anything like that. Like I learned to like just trust who my friends were. Like it didn't matter if their first name was like Matt or something, or if their name was like or if they had a traditional Indian name. Like for me, none of that made any difference. Like it's just about like who you are. Like everyone's connection to God is personal. And even if you choose not to be religious, like it's just a personal decision. Like there's no point spreading any hate about it. Like one of the things that I was always taught, like, and that all Hindus are taught, is to always be accepting.
Right. And yeah, I think that's ideal, right? Is that we can all get along and respect each other's faith and traditions. And I don't know, I sent you this picture from the book that I was reading last night of the text. And this book, for context to the listeners, I'm reading this book called The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. And I think one of the things he talks about is, religions can bind people together, but also blind them. It does both, right? It binds and blinds, and it can, I think it's great that it binds, but it can also blind us to other perspectives. And I think, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
It's like a daily occurrence to see like news in India about like hate crimes on Muslims, or
right.
Like, even within the Hindu society, there used to be a caste system, and like there's people that still look down on certain castes and all that. Like I'm aware of like what caste I am and all, but like for me it doesn't play a role in like how I act or like how I behave towards anyone else. Like some of my best friends are Muslim Indians, and like some of my best friends are like even Christian Indians. Like, and one of the best parts about it is that like you get these Indians that are all together, and like you're sharing like the whole context of being Indian.
Mhm.
Like everything else on a big scale is like the same, but then there's differences in like what food you can eat, like on what days like you say prayer, like
Mhm.
if you go to mosque or if you go to the temple.
Mhm. Got it. And so what would you say, bro, is one of the ways that we can sort of reduce this divide and this extreme separation of and polarity, basically polarization of perspectives, religions, cultures, politics? What's one of the ways that you think that we could try to bridge that? It's a
I
tough question. It's a tough question.
I really just think like politically, we can start politically. I really think we just need a reset. Like, I know like the founding fathers never intended to have a two-party system for a reason, and like however wrong they were on various other topics, they're for sure right on this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
eventually, if you put two people against each other for long enough, like you see this even like in sports or like in
Mm.
school, like like in sports, like the Messi and Ronaldo fan bases have become so toxic
Me and you,
because
me
like
and you.
like at least like some of us have appreciation for like for the other player or like the other like another religion or like another race, but others are just taught to like blindly hate like if you can't go on Twitter without seeing like
Oh my God.
a Barcelona loss and like Ronaldo fans saying like just like calling him Pessy and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And like whenever I see like Pinaldo on Twitter, I'm like, what do you want him to do? Miss the penalty? Like,
Yeah. Right.
and like on a bigger scale than just sports, like just politically, like it's the same thing. Like no matter what, conservatives want liberals to fail, and liberals aren't like excusable either. Like
Both
whatever
sides for sure.
whatever they do, they want to make it as hard as possible for conservative policies to move forward. And like I just feel like with religion, with politics, we've just lost the idea of compromise. Like
Mm.
it's okay to have different opinions, but at the end of the day, we're all the same. Like if I'm bleeding and you're bleeding, we bleed red. Like
Right.
all of our
Right.
blood is the same.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's so interesting that you brought up the point about the Messi and Ronaldo fan bases and just how much hate there is even within sports. Because one of the ways that I have talked about with my friends of, combating this divide, like especially in race, like for example, like racial divides,
Yeah.
me and my friend were saying like, man, I think sports is one of the few ways that we can try to bridge that gap is like when you're younger, if you're a white person, if you're an Indian person, Asian person, black person, if your teammate is different than you, and you work towards the same goal with that person, sort of, obviously we celebrate differences, and I don't think we should ever be colorblind and whatnot, but all those differences start to coalesce into the pursuit towards the same goal. And so you don't look at the person as somebody that's an out group or somebody that's different than you. They're just
Yeah.
your teammate. But
Exactly.
and I think sports is a great way that we can try to bridge that gap, bro. But even sports, like even sports is going to be prey to this human psychology of in group, out group. And, sports are religious in some ways, that's another thing. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I don't know if any of that made sense, but.
Yeah, I feel like it's different when it's different for people who are strictly fans, and it's different for people who've played the sport.
Right.
When you play sports, like you're taught like everyone like people on your team are your teammates, and you're also taught to respect your opponents.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I would never look at any of my teammates of a different race or like religion
Mm-hmm.
and think any differently. Like we have like we're here together, we're working together for one goal.
Right.
People who are just raised as fans who've never gotten like the chemistry behind team sports.
Yes.
When something goes wrong for their team, it's easy to blame the people who don't look like them, which is why especially like in an Italian league, like you see like racial abuse and people are
and stuff,
and like
yeah.
you see like abuse to like people that are on your own team, like the team that you grew up supporting, like you're still abusing your own team.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're abusing the people who like are trying to bring glory to your own football side or like,
right.
And it's just like something that's what I feel like you just have to like play sports, or you have to be in an environment that's conducive to mixing cultures together.
Mm-hmm.
So like one of the best parts about living in the suburbs is generally like you'll have people of all kind of ethnicities or race.
Mm-hmm.
And and even if it's not sports, like in school, you're together, like you're sitting there and like, you just learn the ideology that everyone is the same. Like either you're a school student, like you're an athlete and stuff like that. It's just that you just need exposure, I guess, is the best way
Yeah.
to say it. You just need to be able to you just need to be put in these situations where you can bond with people that aren't the same as you stereotypically.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Early exposure, I think, is one of the most critical parts. So to getting people to work together. And we're always going to have these in groups and out groups. And that's important to recognize our differences for sure, obviously. But I think one of the things I'm passionate about is trying to get us all to recognize the values that we share and the commonalities that we have. And I think sports is a great way to do that. So the more we can get people who don't look the same or have the same political viewpoints or whatever, just playing together, the more respect that we can build in our society. And like, I don't know,
Yeah.
do you seriously worry about America and the state of things right now? Or do you think it's one of those things where we're just going to continue on and we're going to conquer and overcome? Or do you think this could be a problem going
So
forward?
I'll start off with a disclaimer that I'm like not very politically inclined. Like I hate politics so much to the point where
Yeah,
like, I just try to stay up to date on like the big happenings, but like I don't know stuff on like a smaller micro scale.
me neither.
But I think like I think like the way we're heading is a very dangerous path. Like
Mm,
there's there's no sign that people from either side want to start working together.
yeah.
Like it's really cool that like people on on the left side, like AOC, like they want to save the planet,
Hmm.
but at the same time, like the moment like the moment like someone like Ted Cruz agrees with something that she says, she's like, I don't want your support.
Yeah, right.
Like it's true. Like there's a lot of things that people on the left side have done wrong that, and there's a lot of people on the right side that they have done wrong too. And like a lot of them shouldn't be in office based on like some of the atrocities they have committed.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, like even though someone's made a mistake, they're still the person in power and they're
Hmm.
still been elected by their constituents. So you might as well like try to bury the barrier and try to work together. And by working together, like you really allow your citizens to see what they want, what like what's best for them, and they can really like see what they should want
Yeah.
going forward. And from there, they can make more educated decisions on who to elect into office and stuff like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the way we're going currently is just like one side says one thing and one side says the other thing. Like we can't even agree on stuff to help businesses or like people who've lost jobs because of COVID.
Yeah.
Like how long did it take for like a stimulus bill to be put into effect?
Hmm.
And like I get like there's different ideologies, but like you got to, at the end of the day, these people are put into power to work for our best interests. But the way it's going right now is a lot of them are working for their own best interests, and they're not worried about the people that they're supposed to be serving.
Mm.
And I think it's because I think it all fosters back to like when you put two people against each other for that long, hatred and divide is just going to spread.
Right.
And that's just what the two party system for me represents. It's just like you're either left, you're right, or you're in the middle. And if
Hmm.
you're in the middle, like it's a lose for you too, because
Right.
yeah, you'll get something that you want socially, but you won't get something you want economically.
Hmm.
And rather than rather than taking like the pulse of the country, what we're doing is we're taking away our country's pulse and like we're just like radicalizing everyone.
Hmm. Hmm. So you'd be in favor of something like a 3, 4, 5 party system? You'd be in favor of?
So like this is like something I'm not like too knowledgeable on and
Right.
everything like that. And I just think like I ideally like we don't have any parties. Like people just like
Mm.
people like throw their hat into the ring, and like you work to build your following and
Mm.
stuff like that. Like you run like you run like locally first, and you go to a state level, then you can go to a national level, or you can just go straight to a national level if you're like a celebrity or something. But
Mm.
there just needs to be a way that there's not a certain set of rules that all Democrats need to follow and that all like Republicans need to follow. Like rather we should be working towards something where like it's okay for these candidates to have beliefs that fall in between.
Right. Right.
And as long as like the people feel that they're being represented in a good way, in good faith, they should be able to they should be able to run for office, whether that means adding more parties,
Mm.
whether that means reducing parties,
Mm.
I don't know. And especially like we have these other parties, like we have the Green Party and the Tea Party, but they just get no funding.
Right.
And the way it works is like the DNC or the RNC, like a lot of people claim that they just rig it to get whatever candidate they want on to get elected.
Right.
And like I don't know the truth behind all of that and everything like that, but what's the point of adding more parties if people are only going to fund these two big parties still?
Right. Right. No, I think you bring up really interesting points. And the bottom line is it seems that, I don't know what the future looks like, but if we want to create a better future for our kids, grandkids and whatnot, I think bottom line, we got to find those shared common values and come together in whatever way. And also find a way for the algorithms to not polarize us so much and to hate each other. I think that's another huge part of it that a lot of people have recognized, right? Like the role of what shows up on your social media, right? So I don't know, man.
Yeah, just try to be the best person you can be, and it's okay. It's okay if like you don't want to pay higher taxes because you're wealthier. Like if that's what you believe in, that's what you believe in. But at the end of the day, whatever we got to do is for the best of like all 300 million of us, rather than just like a certain set of like just like benefiting the 1% or like the lower class. Like we gotta find a way to find the balance to benefit all of us.
Right. And just being open-minded towards other people with different perspectives is just as best you can, trying to be open-minded and then generating those discussions that will hopefully bridge us together rather than tear us apart.
Exactly.
So, all right, man, that was a super interesting discussion. And for the last couple of minutes here, I wanted to wrap it up by talking about, we have very shared interests in Marvel, Harry Potter, Avatar, and whatnot. Oh, yeah. So I definitely want to talk about that. But the first one I want to touch on is Avatar, because this is, I think you were a big part in getting me to watch that, just like Master of None. But do you want to talk a little bit about your interest in Avatar and why you love the show so much, so we can kind of bounce it back and forth on there?
Yeah, and Avatar like ties perfectly into what we were just talking about.
It does indeed, exactly.
Like it feels like our world is set off the way that Aang first entered the world after he came out of the iceberg, whereas like it's just like utter chaos, like one, rather than like having like one Fire Nation control everything, it was like we have these two parties in America, and just like even globally too. Like I know like politics in India is a disaster and everything too, but Avatar does this beautiful thing, and it shows you that like no matter what colony or like no matter what element you yield, you can all come together. Like the best part about it for me, like as a kid, like I just watched it because I thought it was cool. Like I didn't recognize these themes and stuff. But like I try to rewatch it once a year actually. Like nice. Just rewatching it during the pandemic, like, and just like talking to you about it when you were watching it for the first time, like I know how amazed you were seeing Zuko's like evolution, and it just shows like it's never too late. It's never too late to do the right thing.
Right.
It's never too late to make friends with people that you never thought you could be friends with. No matter what, like if you're working together to do something, like anything is possible. And it also does a great job of showing you like the importance of family, the importance of friendship, the importance to never let too many setbacks get in your way. Like whatever you want to achieve, like if you work hard enough, like you can achieve it, and you can achieve these goals the right way. Like you don't have to like step over people. You don't have to throw people under the bus. Like Aang didn't want to be a murderer at the end, and he found another way, and he still got what he needed. He still did what he set out to do at the beginning.
Right.
And these characters were only like 11 to 13 years of age. Like they're all really young, but like we learned so much about them. Like we learned that it's possible to escape the friend zone. We learned that it's possible. That even if you don't think you're special, like Sokka, there's always something that you can bring to the table. Like you don't have to be like a star athlete or a star student. Like there's always something that you're able to offer. And if you're around the right people, like they'll always appreciate it.
Man, dropping wisdom there. So many themes in the show that, I knew that it was very timely and a great commentary for us at the moment, but the way you articulate it is really enlightening. And I think I didn't even notice the part about, I noticed it, but it's different when you say it out loud and you give me that, the part where Zuko is, their enemy, and then they end up working together to accomplish their goal. And I think that's like everybody hates the Fire Nation in the beginning, right? And I think that's a good example of how the Fire Nation as a whole was really bad, and that obviously they were doing terrible things, but they were able to transcend that and everybody's perceptions of one another and find that relationship.
Just because everyone hates the Fire Nation, that doesn't mean everyone from the Fire Nation is bad. Like
Yeah.
I think like Uncle Iroh and Zuko provide like a great commentary, and it just shows how easily also like how easy it is for someone to go wrong, and why forgiveness is such a huge thing that everyone needs to learn about, because how easy was it for us to love Zuko and then hate Azula. But really what it came down to is Zuko had the battle between good and evil in his head just because of the love his mom had for him. Whereas Azula felt like her mom never loved her.
Yeah, exactly. Azula's background contributing to that, right? And us feeling, I don't know about you, I felt pretty sorry for Azula at the end of the third season, right? Where she's just crying on the ground. It's
because it's easy to relate, like for her, like she was a prodigy, she was a bending prodigy, like, and her dad, her grandfather, they're all evil, and like they tried to take advantage of how good she was at bending, whereas for Zuko it was more of a struggle. So Zuko spent more time with his mother, and it's just like you wonder like if Azula was spending more time with her mom, or like she spent more time with Uncle Iroh after the passing of Uncle Iroh's kid, like just what would happen, like maybe she doesn't burn out and stuff like that, because it's like a common theme, like even if you're a positive person, like it's so easy to burn out, like in sports, like academically, people are burning out all the time. Like it's just to show that like no matter how gifted someone is, pressure can still change them.
right. And Katara and them were basically not that vengeful towards her, and just I guess they locked her up or whatever, but they weren't trying to kill her and everything like that, and they just removed her from the damage that she could basically exert on everybody else. So they were also a mixture of that kindness and strength at the same time. And I think go ahead.
A big thing that I wanted to touch upon before we move to like Harry Potter or Marvel is this: every time you rewatch Avatar, like you gain something new. Like just from talking to someone who just seen it the first time, which was you, I learned to appreciate things in a different way. Like the stuff that you sent me about like Uncle Iroh and
that's what I wanted to talk about in a second. Yeah,
I'd get these text messages and I'd be like, oh, I never even thought about this, and like I've seen the show like maybe like 10 plus times.
I think that's what I wanted to touch on, bro, and this brings it full circle, right? To we were talking about representation within the Indian culture, also bringing people together in politics, what we were just talking about. But for me, I was super struck actually by Uncle Iroh. I actually have a water bottle with Uncle Iroh sticker on there. I love Uncle Iroh because I just think, bro, he is a wonderful example of positive masculinity and non-toxic masculinity,
Exactly.
and what it means to be a man in every way. That I wish I had seen that when I was younger and when I was 6 or 7, and the power of media in shaping who kids end up being. And kids don't realize that, they don't know the term positive masculinity when they're 6 or 7, but just seeing a character like Iroh, I think one of the best parts about storytelling and stories in general is the impact that they can have on us going forward, even without us recognizing. So I think Iroh's positive masculinity was a big deal for me upon watching the show.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. And like it's the same thing with watching like Dev and Master of None. Like it's okay that Dev is an Indian who's not academically inclined. Like he wanted to be an actor, and like it's great. Like we need more people out there from all cultures trying to put on these like just like to entertain, like to share with us like who they are. And I think like Avatar and Master of None are both like some shows that really stick with me, because they show like it's okay to be different, and as long as you're surrounded by people who love you, like anything is possible. Like your dreams are possible. Like, and and they're both just subtle reminders on just what the reward is for being a good person.
Yeah, I agree. And I love how Iroh is just, again, that mixture of kindness and strength. Like he didn't, being like positive masculinity doesn't mean you let people walk over you, or you're just like super soft, or like, not opinionated, or don't have ideals. But he was able to express his emotions and cry and be sad, but also like he was grinding in prison, doing his push-ups and pull-ups, and he got out, and then he knew he had to fight for what was right. And I don't know, I could go on for days, but it's all these ethical lessons that you're touching on that resonated with me. So for the listeners, highly recommend go check out Avatar if you haven't. But yeah, man, thanks again for, giving me that recommendation. It was sick.
Yeah, man.
But
it's going to be one of those shows that's probably forever going to be my favorite show of all time.
Yeah, for sure. And I got to go back and rewatch it, right? That's the best part when a show can keep on giving. But yeah, bro, I think we're almost at time, unfortunately. It's been an absolute pleasure. We're blasting through things. But I like to, so we could talk about Marvel, HP next time. And then also, hopefully, maybe we'll talk a little bit about medicine next time. But lastly, I like to end the episode with anything that you've been doing for fun or found that brings you some joy over this pandemic. You don't have to say yes. It's not like, in the pandemic, we're all like, oh, we got to find all these things that we love and productivity, but anything that's been bringing you joy recently. I'd like to end on that.
For me, the big thing is just trying to stay on schedule. Like I just try to keep the same schedule I would have otherwise. Like, especially like I'm lucky and I'm doing school like through the pandemic too. So like I'm forced to keep the same schedule to a certain point. Like it's easy to fall into these negative habits and stuff like that if you don't have something to keep you trying to keep ascending. And the best part about the pandemic for me was just like I had more time to like reconnect with friends. Like I've gotten closer with so many friends I'd fallen out of touch with like in college and high school. I was able to reconnect with friends that I had from like my study abroad program. And it's just like shows like, it's just like the biggest lesson I've taken away from it is just like the fragility of life and like how important it is to make sure like the people that you love know that you love them and that you're there for them. And it's just been something that's been like really eye-opening. Like it's like another lesson for me to be the best friend, to be the best family member that I can be, and to just be there for anyone anytime they need me.
Yeah. Vivek dropping mad wisdom out here. Inspirational, firing me up. I love it, dude. Pandemic's been brutal in so many ways. And so anything that we can find of, positives we can bring out of it are great. And hopefully as a nation, we can move forward, together like we're talking about. And just been super inspirational today, dude. And sharing all these things has been really enlightening for me, learning a lot. And I'm really thankful that you came on, bro. And I can't wait to have you back on soon.
Yeah, man, I'm very glad that you invited me to be a guest on your show. We talk about like all the stuff that we've talked about for your listeners. Like we talk about daily on a one-to-one basis. So,
for
like,
sure.
It's just been good to like, rather than texting about it, to talk about it in the open. Like as much as you've learned from me, I've learned even more from you. And like I know like pretty much everything that we talked about today, like we're pretty much 100% in agreement on. And like I just appreciate how our friendship is always able to be like an open discussion, and we're not trying to hide who we are. And like I think like our friendship is just like the biggest simile to what we're trying to show. Like we were raised differently, like, but we were raised trying to follow the same common goal of becoming a doctor. But like rather than trying to compete with each other or tear each other down, we've been side by side working together. We share the common themes of sports and even when it comes to like media and stuff, like it's been really cool to watch you like pick up these shows that I've watched like years ago.
For sure.
Hear like your opinions on it, and it's just been awesome that we've been able to like further our bond in this time that we've been stuck at home.
For sure, bro. Warming my heart, dude. And like you said, even the things that we don't share is one of the best parts of, our relationship. I feel like just hearing about, your Indian culture, for example, or tennis. I didn't play tennis, you know what I mean? So it's just, I love just hearing from you. And I think our listeners will too, bro. You're a very interesting guy with a lot to offer. So thanks for sharing that with the world today, man.
Yeah. Glad to be here. And anytime you want me back, you know where to go.
Yes, sir. Thanks, brother Vivek. Talk soon.
Yep. Talk to you soon.